Hi. Well, I hope you're having a great day today. We here in the office at church are having a very good day because for the last 2 days, all of our office equipment, cabinets, computers, you name it, have all been moved out into our common space. And the carpeting was ripped up, and they have laid new carpet, and now we've all got our offices kind of semi back in order, and it's good. The carpet looks great. The other stuff was about 15 years old and in need of replacing. So it's kind of like getting a new car or getting new furniture. It's just got a new feel to it, so it's kind of wonderful right now. But anyway, brings us to today and Jesus in the garden praying, and we're going to find out that that's something he does regularly. But I want to begin with a verse in Philippians 2. The Apostle Paul tells us in Philippians 2 verse 12 to work out our salvation with fear and trembling. And the real question I've always had is, okay, so God grants us faith, and then throughout our lives he says, work out that salvation now that I have given you, and do it well, and do it in such a way that it continues to grow, and you are ready once again for Christ's coming again, or for your moving beyond the door of this life and into the next. And the question becomes, how do we do that? How do we do that constructively? How do we do that well? And today, in the midst of everything, with all that's going on here in the garden, and the arrest and the betrayal by Judas, and the example of Peter pulling out a sword and cutting off a servant's ear, and the riot that almost ensues, Jesus provides a wonderful example for us of how do you work out your salvation with fear and trembling. What do you do when the emotional upheavals of life kind of take hold? And I liked what Luke brought to this word today that we read. Matthew and Mark seem to focus on the apathy of the disciples, and that's usually what we talk about is, oh, they fell asleep. 3 times Jesus calls on them, and there they are sleeping. But Luke gives us this little different perspective. And what he points out is certainly Jesus is dealing with all sorts of emotions, and we can just imagine, the same as we do all the time. The question is, what does he do with it? How does he handle it? And, well, he goes off and prays, and what Luke points out is, in verse 39, he does this regularly. Says Luke lets us know that this isn't an uncommon occurrence. This is where we can find Jesus. He does this quite regularly. And Luke tells us that in the midst of that prayer, God comes to him in the form of an angel to bring strength to Jesus. His sweat becomes like great drops of blood to tell you the kind of passion that he is experiencing, thinking ahead to his suffering and his death. Now, surely his disciples failed him, but the reality that we learn here is that even in the midst of all those around you who might fall by the wayside, God does not fail his Son. And there's a marvelous example for us when it seems our emotions are welling up in us and we don't know where to turn. Rather than lash out, rather than despair or become depressed, we turn to our Father. And when we do that, he is sure to provide us strength if we go to him in the midst of it. So Jesus is betrayed and arrested. It looks like we've got a riot in the making here. Fighting is going to begin to break out. There are the soldiers who the Pharisees have sent along with Judas, and there are the disciples who are packing swords at this point. And when asked, who are you, Jesus of Nazareth, several times, Jesus in the Gospel of John simply replies, I am he. There's that interesting I am term again. If you remember in the Old Testament, in Exodus, Moses asked what should he tell people his name is, and God says, Yahweh, I am, and I am that I am. And the Gospel of John uses that phrase, that term, over and over. I am the bread of life, I am the resurrection, I am the light of the world. Here Jesus says, I am he. And of course John wants to make clear that we understand that what Jesus is telling people is that I am the Messiah, I am the Son of God. And so, in a very not so subtle way, Jesus is making a claim there, and obviously those around fall down before him. They know of his power. They have seen what he has done, and nonetheless, he makes it very clear. He doesn't hide, and he puts an end to the routine or to the possible fighting that was to break out. So Judas arranges to have the soldiers arrest him, and here's my thought here. Besides the fact that when we experience trouble, when our emotions get the best of us, it's best to take a time out and turn to God. That's lesson number one. But number two, in the midst of all of this, we find out that Judas lets the soldiers follow him, and he knows where to find Jesus. He found Jesus praying, where Luke tells us he goes often. And it got me to thinking about how we are so regulated by our routines each day. We go to the grocery store, we go to school, we go to work, we come to church, we are in the playground, we're coaching sports teams, we're doing all those things that we typically do. And people a lot of times will be able to track us and follow us because they'll kind of, if they're friends, they kind of know what our routine is, so they know where they could find us if they needed to. Here, Judas finds Jesus exactly where he expects him to be, praying. And it got me to thinking, if someone really wanted to find me, what would be the best place to go? Would they find me with my Father in heaven? Would they find me in prayer? Would they find me working for the betterment of others? Would they find me worshiping him? Would they find me reading his word? Are those the places that people would find me? Or would they just find me in the world with everybody else doing the same routines as everybody else? That becomes a challenge for me today as I want to pray and contemplate more about how do people find me? Where do they find me? And I pray that they find me with my Father in heaven. And I pray that also for you. So don't let your emotions get the best of you. Trust in the Lord and go to him in the midst of the trials and struggles and turmoil, and he will give you rest. He will give you peace, as he has promised. God's blessings to you today, and we'll continue to talk in the future. Bye.